Hello everyone, my name is Austin Angulo. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Virginia in the Transportation Engineering Department, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about multimodal transit interconnectivity, specifically in Los Angeles, California, and Helsinki, Finland. Basically, I'm going to be talking about their bike share systems and how they interconnect with public transportation. So the agenda for this presentation is fairly simple. First, I'm going to talk about the current scenario, how bike shares operate in the public sector, how they function, etc. And then I'm going to talk about the drawbacks of how these systems operate. After that, I'm going to talk about metro bikes in LA and also city bike share in Helsinki, Finland. It's known as city bike share. After that, I'm going to talk about why this is important, these two systems, and what they mean for other locations possibly. And then I'll discuss some conclusions and raise some questions for you guys to think about. So currently, bike share systems are designed by private firms, people like B-Cycle, Motivate, and other companies, basically create these systems for city governments that come to them and ask them for input in installing and operating these systems. Usually you just have some stalls with a kiosk possibly connected to them so that you can pay for your trip or create an account possibly. At some of these locations you can do that, at others you have to do it just online. And some of these systems also have mobile applications, and this is extremely useful, but we're going to talk a little bit more about mobile applications with bike share systems in just a bit. So the drawbacks with these systems are that they are privately operated, and what that means is that someone is being paid to basically operate these systems. Furthermore, they require credit card payment most of the time, pretty much all of the time actually, and even at kiosks just to rent the bikes. This can be extremely intimidating for a lot of users because it feels not part of the system. It feels abstract almost. Another problem is that location information is accessed on a separate mobile application, so you can't just hop on your phone and look for where bikes are located, etc. if you're looking at transit operations such as like bus times and metro times. There are applications like we've seen before with the Go Denver application that kind of collect this information and provide it to you, but that's all pulling from different sources and it requires a lot of external effort for such applications. And to me, it just makes sense that that should all be integrated. So what you see at the bottom right there is the lack of integration. There is a large lack of connectivity in between these systems, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So where is the ITS applications portion of this? Well, it is basically in the complete infrastructure of how bike share systems operate. So first on the agenda is the Metro bikes in Los Angeles, California. This is a newly implemented system as of this year that is basically going to take advantage of the public transportation network and make things simpler for users. So it's a co-op between Metro bikes and the city of LA, and the bike locations, the share locations, are located determined on existing public infrastructure. Basically, they are aiming to get users in the last mile trip portion of riders, and this makes it a lot easier for people using public transportation because then the stalls are really close by. Furthermore, this is the first bike share network in the United States to be run by a transit agency. That is extremely important to note. This means that it is being designed by people who actually know how the system functions and deal with it on a day-to-day basis and know what the user's requirements are, rather than an external source coming in and trying to find out all that information within a year before putting down the system, like happens most of the time. Furthermore, they also are taking advantage of the tap card, and they are using a single fare card. This means that you can hop on the bus, the metro, and hop on a bike all with the same pass. You can just tap the card, literally, and go. There are, however, a couple of shortcomings to this system. There is a lack of an integrated app. Unfortunately, the Metro Bike system in LA requires that you install a separate mobile application. This will tell you where the bikes are located and how many bikes are at each kiosk, but it's still not connected to the total system. Furthermore, pass options aren't optimal. There is no option for a yearly pass with free travel under 30 minutes, which is a little bit frustrating for some users. Usually trips there are $3.50. However, if you get the yearly pass for only $40, each trip under 30 minutes is only $1.75 with an additional $1.75 charge for extra 30 minutes. While that is still pretty low, it would be nice to have an option that you can pay yearly where you can just get free trips under 30 minutes and anything over is at a discounted rate. The pass options also require that the user register their tap card with the bike share online. This is not unheard of since these systems are slowly being integrated into current infrastructure. It needs this component. However, in the future, it would be much better if they were just all already interconnected in one. Now on to City Bike in Helsinki, Finland. This bike share system began in 2014, and it was focused on a lot of really user-oriented options. So first is the single fare card for transit operations, like I've discussed before. You can use the fare card for buses, for metro, for the bike, everything. And that is just really simple for the user. They also brand all of their bikes exactly as they do their buses and other transit operations. This means that everything is homogeneous. The bike share system appears to be part of public transportation rather than a separate entity sitting by your bus stop. That is extremely important for user perception of the system. When you see these bikes being part of the system, it feels like you should use it rather than something that's maybe a little bit obtuse. Furthermore, the mobile application is to include bike share locations and availability alongside other transit options for optimal trip planning. That is so important. That just helps trip planning in general for all users. This way you can just hop on your phone application, plan a trip, and choose all the different modes of transit that you can, or that are available to you. Furthermore, they are also working towards using the same account for purchasing metro, bus, and bike trips rather than linking accounts. So currently you still have to register for the bike share system, but what they're trying to work towards is just making this all the same thing so that you don't even have to have a separate account for, let's say, your metro card and then your bike share card. So even if they're the same card, you have to have these separate accounts, and they're really working towards just trying to integrate these two systems together. That way you can just tap your card anywhere you go and don't have to worry about creating multiple accounts and putting money in them. So the City Bike Share system in Helsinki was incredibly successful. They only started out with 500 total bikes and they averaged 6.9 trips per bike per day, in comparison to other large systems like Velib Paris and City Bike, who sport 5.3 and 5.2 trips per bike per day. This is extremely high. Their peak trips even reached 8.9 trips per bike, and that was actually seen on a Wednesday, which makes sense because Wednesday is in the middle of the week, and you probably see the most riders in the middle of the week. The goal is to triple the number of bikes in the system. Whether or not this will bring down that number is up for debate. Since there are less bikes, we might see more trips on the bike, and there actually might be more demand and system failure, as in bikes not being available at stations. So whether or not this increased number of bikes will affect that number or has a direct effect on those numbers just in general is up to question. But what we see right now is that the number of trips per bike per day is very large in Helsinki. And if you look down underneath, the quote by Samuli Mäkinen, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name exactly, what he says here is, I think, just extremely important in general for transportation planning and ITS applications, is that we have to look past the monetary importance of these systems and think about the user a little bit more. It might be expensive to implement some of these things, but the benefits you can reap can just be extreme and beneficial in most cases when you really put in the effort to satisfy users. And I just think that there's a lot that can be taken from that. So basically, what does this mean for us and these ITS applications in general? Well, this sort of ITS infrastructure, the way that they build the system and design it to all be integrated, is just the right way of doing it, or at least appears to be the right way of doing it. Talking a little bit about DC Capital Bike Share, I have a couple of points there that you can read through. I don't want to increase the time too much here because I'm definitely going to be going over, but one of the most important things I want to point out is that second bullet, and that with an increase of about 10% bike share usages, a 2.8% increase in Metro Rail usage is expected, and that's within DC, and this is all taken from their planning organization annual report. So what does that mean? That means that we can start moving people out of cars, getting them using public transportation more. That's a huge goal of DC, and by making these systems more user-friendly and simple to operate and less intimidating, what we'll see are just the benefits that DC wants to see. Plus, DC also has an insane amount of traffic around it, so limiting the amount of people that are actually riding in vehicle to work and getting all those smaller short location or short trips by proximity, that's extremely beneficial. So the conclusions here are that we can take advantage of these increased technologies and information systems in ITS and just basically use all of this information now to make things a lot simpler for users, make them all integrated that way. Users have all of this information at their fingertips. We've been slowly building up these systems where the information is available, yet users don't know exactly how to access the information. You might have to switch in between applications, you might have to create different accounts, or you might just be intimidated by the infrastructure altogether and just resort to driving your car instead. With all of these things combining together, it just makes the system simpler, easier for the user, and also better for understanding and collecting data. That's a huge component of this, is that we can collect a lot of data, especially when we're using those trip cards for each kind of trip. That way we understand the way people use our networks better and can create these systems for them. So thank you everyone for taking your time to watch this presentation. I hope it has been at least informational. I hope you've learned something, and if you have any questions, comments, or even corrections, please feel free to say so on the discussion forum or contact me directly. Thank you.